There's a belief that is quietly destroying your ability to function. It's not a dramatic belief, not something you'd identify as a problem if somebody asked you. It sits underneath everything, underneath your decisions, your tolerance for situations that you shouldn't be tolerating, your tendency to wait rather than act, and your sense that things will probably stay more or less the way they are. The belief is this, that your choices don't really matter. Not in a nihilistic sense, not in a conscious way. Most people don't actually think that. It's much more subtle. This is just how it is. There's nothing I can do. Everyone's dealing with it. The what's the point mindset. And here's what psychological research actually shows about people who hold that belief. Even implicitly, even without knowing that they hold it. They're more passive. They're more compliant, more easily manipulated, more likely to burn out, and significantly less likely to do anything about it. That's not a character assessment. That's a measurable, documented psychological pattern. Today, we're going to dismantle it. My name's Fabian, I'm a psychologist, and this is the Control System series, where we get into mechanisms, psychological and philosophical, that keep intelligent people stuck, burned out, and operating well below what they're actually capable of. And it's not to give you motivation, not to reframe your mindset. It's to give you an understanding, because understanding a control system is the only thing that actually gives you leverage over it. Less stress, more agency, a fundamentally different relationship to the systems you operate in. That's the promise of this series. This is video 2. Let's get started. Here's something I observed repeatedly in corporate environments and even everyday life. Two people, similar backgrounds, similar constraints. One of them constantly finding angles, negotiating, pushing back, creating options, making moves even when the odds seem bad. The other one absorbs, waits, tolerates, endures. The difference is rarely intelligence, rarely even courage in the conventional sense. It's whether they believe that their choices are real, and that belief, or the absence of it, is not random. It's something that gets systematically targeted by the same environments that produce burnout and modern-day hopelessness. Which means by the time that most people are exhausted enough, experience a level of discomfort intense enough to long for change, they've also been stripped of the psychological resources they need to actually make it a reality. So this change remains nothing but a daydream. And this is how people get stuck. Let's have a look at what's actually happening. Let's be clear about something up front, because this topic attracts a lot of philosophical noise that isn't really useful here. Whether free will exists in an absolute metaphysical sense, whether your choices are truly free, whether determinism is ultimately true, that debate is real and is very interesting. And it's completely irrelevant to what we're doing today. What's relevant is this: what happens to human behavior depending on whether people believe their choices actually matter. On that question, the research is pretty unambiguous. In a series of studies by psychologists Kathleen Vohs and Jonathan Schooler, participants were split into two groups. One group read passages that argued against free will, that human behavior is ultimately determined, that the sense of choosing is an illusion. And the other group, the control group, read neutral passages. Then both groups were given opportunities to behave ethically or not, to cheat, to help others, to take responsibility for outcomes. The results were consistent and pretty striking. Participants primed to believe that free will does not exist cheated more, helped less, and took less personal responsibility. They became measurably more passive, more self-serving, because something in their operating framework seemed to have shifted. The belief that choices don't matter produced behavior that confirmed it. And the reverse is true too. People who maintained a strong belief in their own agency, in the reality of their choices, showed more proactive behavior, more ethical decision-making, and more resistance to external pressure, as well as better performance under stress. Let's call this the free will advantage. It's a practical, functional difference in how people move through the world. Now think about what chronic overwork, chronic stress, and chronic exposure to systems that treat you as a resource actually do to this belief over time. Every time you try to push back and it costs you. Every time you raise something and it goes nowhere. Every time you watch someone else get rewarded for behavior you were taught is wrong. Every time you were told, implicitly or explicitly, that this is just how it works. Your belief in the reality of your choices erodes little by little. This is a documented psychological process called learned helplessness. It was first identified by psychologist Martin Seligman in the 1960s. When organisms are repeatedly exposed to negative conditions they cannot control or escape, they stop trying to escape, even when the exit becomes available. They've learned through experience that their actions don't produce any results. Modern workplaces and modern life more broadly are extraordinarily efficient at producing this state in otherwise arguably capable people. The system doesn't need to lock the door. It just needs you to stop checking whether the door is actually open. So here's the inversion that actually matters. You don't need to resolve the philosophical question of free will to access the free will advantage. You need to act as if your choices are real, deliberately, consistently, and especially in moments when your conditioning tells you they're not. And I'm not talking about blind optimism, not pretending that there are no constraints at all, but a functional commitment to treating your decisions as consequential. The alternative is a measurable deterioration of your ability to function, decide, and act overall. The question stops being, do I have free will? And the question becomes, what happens to me if I act as if I don't have free will? You've seen the answer, and you may be living it right now. Now, let's go one level deeper, because the free will advantage shows that believing in your agency matters. Self-determination theory tells us exactly what happens to you when that agency is systematically blocked, and why burnout is not a stress problem, it's a structural one. Self-determination theory was developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. It's one of the most robust and well-replicated frameworks in motivational psychology. And its central claim is pretty straightforward. Human beings have basic psychological needs. Not preferences, not nice-to-haves, needs. In the same way that physical organisms have nutritional needs. When those needs are met, people function well. When they're chronically unmet, people deteriorate. Not metaphorically, measurably. Self-determination theory identifies 3 of these needs. Today, we're going to focus on 2. Need number 1 is autonomy. Autonomy in self-determination theory doesn't mean doing whatever you want. It means feeling like you are the author of your own actions. That what you're doing reflects your actual values and choices, rather than external pressure, fear of consequences, or somebody else's agenda. This is the sense of, I'm doing this because I choose to, not because I have to. And here's what research shows happens when autonomy is chronically violated, when people operate for extended periods in environments where they have no real voice, no real choice, and no real ownership over their actions. Intrinsic motivation collapses. The internal drive to engage, to do good work, to care about outcomes, it doesn't just diminish, it switches off. What replaces it is compliance, the minimal output required to avoid negative consequences. And it's no coincidence that this sounds like your average corporate environment. Stress hormones rise and stay elevated. Chronic autonomy deprivation is physiologically stressful in a way that occasional high-pressure situations are not. It's not the volume of work that breaks people, it's the absence of control over it. It's not the volume of work that breaks people, it's the lack of control over this work. It's your incompetent boss and the people and behaviors that lack any kind of personality being promoted. And so identity starts to erode. When you spend long enough acting against your own values and preferences, doing what the system demands rather than what you actually believe in, the sense of who you are, separate from the role imposed upon you, starts to thin, starts to vanish. This is why the burnout that comes from autonomy deprivation feels different from ordinary exhaustion. It's not just tiredness, it's a kind of hollowness. It's the sense that the person doing all of this work is somehow not quite you. Need number 2, competence. Competence in self-determination theory is the need to feel effective, to experience that your skills and efforts actually produce results, that what you do matters and that you're capable of doing it. It's mastery in actions chosen by you. This sounds obvious, but think about what modern work environments frequently do to this need. You work hard, but the goalposts keep moving. The metrics change. The project gets deprioritized, and your boss that didn't do anything takes all the credit. Those corporate systems are complex enough that causality is almost impossible to establish. You can never quite tell if what you did actually made a difference because there are too many variables, too many layers, and just too much noise. And over time, this produces something that looks like apathy, but it's not quite that. It's a rational response to an environment that has made it impossible to experience competence, even when you are objectively capable. And this is why high-performing people just burn out. It's not that they can't do the work, it's that the environment has been structured in a way that makes it impossible to feel the feedback loop between effort and outcome that human psyche requires to stay engaged. Take away someone's sense of competence long enough, and you don't just get a burnout. You get a self-doubt that outlasts the environment that caused it. People leave bad jobs and still feel like they're not good enough because the system did such a thorough job of severing the connection between their effort and any real result. A quick note on need number 3, relatedness. Self-determination theory's third need is relatedness, the need for genuine connection with others, not managed relationships, and not team building exercises, but actual human connection. It matters a lot. In environments that treat people as resources rather than actual people, it's chronically unmet. But for the purposes of this episode, and specifically the questions of agency and free will, autonomy and competence have the biggest impact on why you feel stuck. So we'll pick up relatedness properly when we get to the control systems around identity and belonging. Stay tuned for that one. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Here's how those two things, the free will advantage and self-determination theory, fit together. Self-determination theory tells you what you need to function as a human being. Autonomy and competence are at the top of this list. The free will research tells you what happens when those needs are blocked long enough. You stop believing your choices are real. And once that belief is gone, once learned helplessness has set in, the system no longer needs to actively constrain you. You constrain yourself. That's the elegance of it from the system's perspective. The most efficient control is the one you administer yourself. Understanding this doesn't fix it overnight, but it does something very important. It relocates the problem. The issue is not your resilience, not your attitude. It's not that you are not cut out for this. It's that you've been operating in conditions specifically designed to erode the psychological resources you need to change them. That's a very different diagnosis. And the different diagnosis points towards different solutions. So how can you start making use of what you just heard? Try this practical exercise. Let's call it the agency audit. 3 questions. Write them down or find them in the description and actually answer them. Question number 1. Where in your life right now do you feel the least sense of authorship? Where does it feel most things are happening to you rather than being chosen by you? Name it specifically. Don't generalize. Question number 2. In the same area, what is one decision, however small, that is actually yours to make? Not the big structural change, the smallest real choice available to you inside the constraints as they currently exist. And question number 3. What would you do differently in that situation if you genuinely knew the outcome was influenced by your choices? You don't need to act on those answers immediately. The exercise is noticing. Because the moment you can locate where your agency is being taken, leached, drained, or given away, you start the process of getting it back. You're not burned out because you're weak. You're not stuck because you lack discipline or drive or the right morning routine. You're in a measurable psychological state, induced by environments that systematically deprive people of autonomy and competence, and reinforce the belief that your choices don't matter. That's not a personal failing. That's a documented process with a name and a mechanism. And now you see it. In the next video, we go into the territory that most people avoid because it's uncomfortable in a different way. Not the systems that grind you down, but the people who seem immune to them, who rise through the same environments that are breaking you, using tools you were never given and were probably told were wrong. The dark triad, what it is, why certain systems reward it, and most importantly, what you can extract from it. I'll see you there. If you stuck around to the end, Thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Leave a like, and if you feel like it, put the answers to the 3 questions in the comments below.